Earlier today, Brother Mark Cruz sent me a particular story of this successful lady who is a millionaire truck owner. And she was asked a similar question to Ebony K. Williams, pretty much about how much money a man needs to make and if he needs to spend a lot of money on the wedding or an engagement ring. I believe what I want to do is play that clip, and then I'm coming back to talk about it.
If you met a man and he treated you right, what would be an acceptable amount of money for him to spend on a wedding ring that would make you happy?
I don't care about that type of shit at all. At all. Like $1,000, not whatever you could afford. I'm not big on material shit.
So we talk about this because this is, unprecedented where, women are making that much money. And, it's hard to probably find a man who's at that bracket.
Yes.
So you always will probably come into a situation where you like a guy, but he's going to be way under you.
That's almost every man I with.
I'm sure. I'm sure. So how do you judge when to be submissive and when to be dominant in your situations? Because you're always going to come in the breadwinner, I'm assuming.
So first off, for a woman, for any boss woman, that submissive shit, it takes a certain type of submissive, number one. And I don't mean by no damn bank account. It's way deeper than that. As long as a man of God and he's staying on business and he's a kind person.
Now, you heard what she had to say. And to be fair to her, what she is saying is, listen, I'm not really worried about the financial component of the relationship. He can buy me an engagement ring for $1,000. But then once the conversation went towards submission, that is where we had a problem. You guys caught that, right? When it came to submission, she had a very big issue with that. She said for a boss chick like me to submit, it's not easy. Now, let's kind of go back to that whole point. I don't have a problem marrying a man, but for him to submit, get me to submit, that's hard. That's key, right? I want you guys to understand that. She said, the guy has to be on and stuff, be a Christian, not necessarily have more money than me. But in the end, what I can infer from that, she's not going to submit to anybody. And that's the whole point. And Brother Mark brought up something in the email I won't show. He said, listen, if this lady was younger and let's say more in her physical prime, or let's say if she looked, to some brothers more attractive, would she have that mentality? And see, that's the whole point where I'm trying to get at, right? Me and Dr. Tiesan Johnson did an episode last year or 2 years ago on son husbands, right? Why successful black women are in a position such that they have to deal with men who make less money than them. Let's play that clip.
Well, it was something I noticed. I actually had a brother reach out to me, and he was talking about, he was married and his wife is a six-figure earner, and he talked about her girlfriends that would come over and complain about their husbands. And as he would talk about it, one of the things he shared with me is they had to ask for an allowance from their wives just to go hang out and drink a beer. So I was just kind of asking him some more questions about it. And one of the things he revealed is that this group of six-figure earning women were all exclusively married to brothers who were ex-cons. And if anything, they were unemployed and to some extent homeless when they met. You know what I mean? And so now they're kind of house husbands, which there's nothing wrong with if that's what works for your relationship. But the problem was the women were actually complaining about the fact that they didn't have an income, complaining about the fact that they weren't the men that, that they've been idealizing since they were young. And yet these were the men that they chose, right? And so he was confused, and he reached out to me because he was asking me, why is this the case? And as I started to look into it, I realized it really wasn't a whole lot different than son husbands. So, we talk about son husbands as boys whose biological mothers kind of have them play husband roles in their lives, play roles that are really, inappropriate And it doesn't have to get sexual, but unfortunately, there are times where it does. There's sexual violation in regard to that. But for the most part, when we talk about son husbands, these are biological offspring that are asked to play emotionally laborious roles for mothers that usually are reserved for men. With husband sons, one of the things I began to notice is that you had well-to-do women who were employed, who were educated, so on and so forth, and who would use the rationale that there were no other options, and they would choose men that were intentionally in such a low position that those men could not offer much challenge. So in other words, they were in the dominant position in the relationship. These men depended on them for hearth and home, for income, for food, for everything. And if there was so much as an argument, those men.
Now, recently I covered this particular topic on my King Ghana podcast. Go check it out. And the name of that episode, I believe, was African American women are being beaten by their Tanzanian husbands. And really what you had in that situation was a certain African American woman, not all, were getting with these Tanzanian men, moving to Tanzania or other parts of Africa. And sometimes they would basically, for the ladies that didn't want to submit, some of them would end up getting hit, okay? But I want to play a clip from Jonita, who's on my podcast over there, on the King Ghana podcast. And I want you to hear the African perspective of what a woman should be doing regardless of how much she makes to be submissive. Let's play that.
First off, I think what happens is when these African American women come to the continent, they get with the most traditional men. I don't know if that makes sense, because you definitely can find a modern African man and he doesn't think in that way. But I think when they move over to the continent, they want the guy who's like so traditional, the guy who's like African through and through. Is that making sense?
Yes, makes sense.
I feel like they look for like the guy who's wearing the dashiki and with some African face paintings. Like they look for that type of African man.
Right.
And then when they get with that type of African man, they find out, hey, this is not what happens in this region. Because when you look back, with the way the traditional African man is that he is the head of the family no matter what. You are not just going to wake up one day and start talking back to the man. If he is a traditional African man, it's not allowed. They just can't think of it. We all know someone, she's working, right? So when COVID happened, the husband stopped earning money. So the husband has not been earning, I think, for the past 2 years. She's been providing for that home. But when you see her interact with the husband, she is the most respectful woman. You can't even think she's the one funding that family. You can't think of that. So you see, so that's how most things are. But when I think of African American women being with these men, I think sometimes the power dynamics come in and then she's thinking, if I make more.
So if you listen to Jonita's clip, that is very paramount to today's discussion. And the reason why is this. The Bible in theory says, wives, submit to your husband. It doesn't mean how much you make or how much he makes. It shouldn't be, you shouldn't even marry a man you couldn't submit to. All right? But as you see in other parts of the world, clearly where if you can make more money than me as a woman, that doesn't mean that you don't have I'm still running the house. Now, what's happening in the West is because a lot of these sisters, and you can see the ones, I'm just going to be real. A lot of the sisters that are not the most feminine or act the most feminine, or let's say, for example, like Kevin says, fit, friendly and all that. Those ladies have a hard time getting to the top percentage of black men. We all know that. Now, here's what as black men we take umbrage with. Okay, I don't want to date you because you don't make enough money. Here's the downside to that though. If you do date her and you don't make enough money as she does, you run a large risk of being verbally abused in the relationship. Threatened to be put out in the relationship, talked down to in the relationship, and her looking at you as somebody that she can't be submitted to. And now the reason why I played the whole thing with Jonita is because, listen, a man is going to want to be a man. Some guys might take it personal, and we all know how that can turn out. So don't put yourself in any situation to deal with a woman, in my honest opinion, that you feel in America earns more than you do. I would say for the both of y'all, it's best to stay away from each other. Unless it's the point like, look, I know what I can do here or whatever, and you got your stuff, I got my stuff, respect me as an individual. But if you need somehow her money to get by and do things, bro, it's not gonna be nice. And these chicks like her, they're not gonna tell you that up front. She's saying, oh no, I don't care if you buy me a ring and all that, because I got the money. But see, how is she gonna treat you during a relationship? Hey, look, I got a business to run. You don't like it, you can get out. Bro, you're not gonna get no femininity. You're gonna be getting talked down to, regulated, all kind of stuff. And so many men fall for that. I think it's better that they tell you that up front. No, if you don't make this amount of money, don't talk to me. I think that's great. Because even if you didn't make that amount of money, you probably still wouldn't talk to them. But don't get yourself set up, man. You start dealing with these chicks out here and you start having, getting verbally abused, you're not gonna like that. And then you might want to take it and take it to another level and have your ass in jail. So before you do that, it's best to leave them alone. So guys, what do you think? It's your boy, O'Shea Duke Jackson, back at it again. Another episode of The Celebrity Junk. What you follow you, subscribe to the bell. We're out.